Tubman began her life in the bonds of slavery, but lived her life helping others achieve their freedom.
She really helped Black people have a sense of self, a sense of freedom, and a sense that, you know, slavery was not right.
Araminta Harriet Ross was born into slavery around 1820 in Dorchester County, Maryland. As a child, she was loaned out to different plantations. By the time she turned 12, she was working in the fields. When she was a young teen, she suffered a severe injury which would affect her for the rest of her life.
A slave owner threw a metal weight at another slave and accidentally hit her in the head. For the rest of her life, she suffered epilepsy, terrible headaches, but she also had these strange visions, which she ascribed to God communicating to her. And she took these visions as a symbol of her mission, like Moses, to go and free her people.
In 1844, she married John Tubman, who was a free Black man, a fairly common occurrence in Maryland. Harriet was determined to escape her life of slavery, and in 1849, she finally did it. She risked her life by making her way from Maryland to Philadelphia. She followed the North Star and used the so-called Underground Railroad to make it to freedom.
Lord, I'm a pilgrim.
The Underground Railroad was an organized group of free Blacks, whites, and Christian abolitionists who helped slaves escape to the North. Harriet had made it to the Promised Land. No one would have blamed her if she never returned to the South, but she desperately wanted to free her family. She made perilous trips back to free her 2 brothers, her sister, and her sister's 2 children. When she made a 3rd trip to get her husband, she found he had taken another wife. Instead of returning with her husband, she saved more slaves.
Not only did she escape slavery and achieve freedom for herself, but she went back down into the South to bring freedom to dozens of other slaves.
Harriet was clever as she was brave, figuring out countless tricks to bring many slaves to freedom over the next several years.
The fact that she developed these paths and trails that took people through the country, and they traveled at night, and they used quilts to have secret codes and know the paths, and then to bring people north across the Mason-Dixon line into Ohio to find freedom. So she was a pioneer, and I think a very, very strong woman.
Her legendary status as an Underground Railroad conductor earned her the nickname Moses.
Well, I think Harriet Tubman's name, Moses, you know, comes from Moses from the Bible, leading people to freedom. And it's a very, very proper name, I think, for her, and one that she definitely lived up to.
In 1850, things became more dangerous for Harriet when the Fugitive Slave Act was passed. Instead of being a free woman, she was now a fugitive. She continued to free slaves, but now guiding them to Canada so they could truly be free. From 1851 to 1857, Harriet lived mostly north of the border in St. Catharines, Canada. She continued to make trips to Maryland twice a year to save more slaves. Besides her work as a liberator of slaves, Harriet spoke in support of anti-slavery and women's rights. Her efforts made her a wanted woman with a bounty on her head, but she was never turned in. She aided abolitionist John Brown with his plans for the raid on Harper's Ferry. During the Civil War, the government asked her to help the Union cause by organizing a network of spies among Black men in the South.
Not only was she known as the Great Liberator, but she also assisted the Union Army, going down on patrols and advising Union officers on how best to attack the South.
Out in the trenches, she also helped Colonel James Montgomery disrupt Southern supply lines, which resulted in the freedom of hundreds of slaves. After After the war, Harriet dedicated herself to establishing schools for freed men in South Carolina. Even though she couldn't read or write, she understood the value of education. In her later years, Tubman worked with her friend Susan B. Anthony to support the cause of women's suffrage.
Harriet Tubman is relevant today, not only for her work in terms of racial justice, but also in terms of women's rights. After the Civil War, she became an outspoken supporter for the suffrage movement to get women the right to vote.
To help make ends meet and continue to help the causes she believed in, she worked on a book called Scenes in the Life of Harriet Tubman. In 1908, she established a home for older poor African Americans in Auburn, New York, which she moved into in 1911. She lived there till her death in 1913 from pneumonia. She was buried with full military honors.
But I remember.
Harriet Tubman, has a lot of significance for black people, particularly in the age of Obama, because she kind of started the liberation of black people, in the days of slavery, and really set the path of civil rights in the United States.
From the Bible.
Harriet Tubman's bravery and determination allowed her to accomplish incredible things throughout her amazing life.
From Galilee.
She is someone that you cannot forget. She is someone that really kind of changed our perception of what equality and freedom and liberation and civil rights mean.
The hour I first believed.
Why you didn't sit in the back of the bus that day?
About the third stop from where I boarded the bus, there were some white people got on, and they took all the front seats and left one man standing. And when the driver saw this man standing up...
White man?
Yes, he was white.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't, the passenger didn't ask for the seat at all. They didn't say anything, but just found a place to stand. The driver noticed him standing, and that is when he told the four of us to let him have those seats, which meant that four of us would have been standing, and then this man could only occupy one seat, and then there would be 3 vacant seats.
But you weren't supposed to sit next to a white man.
That was the rule then.
So you did not get up?
No, I didn't.
Do you know why?
Yes, because I didn't think I should have to get up. I had already paid my fare, and I'm sure he didn't pay any more than I did. And I didn't think that once we take a seat, even in under segregation conditions, that we should be made to stand up in a crowded bus.
Are you bitter over it?
No, I'm not.
Why
not
not?
at this time. Well, in fact, during our protest in Montgomery, we did have some white people who
Joined with you?
Joined with us, and they suffered a great deal. And I felt that it was, in fact, Dr. Martin Luther King used to say himself that it was not a black and white issue, but it was right and wrong.
Right, absolutely. So you didn't hold it against collectively all white people?
That's true. I did not.
What then did you do with your anger?
I tried to use my anger I tried to have as little anger as possible, but I tried to use it to help people who were suffering and many who were discouraged and did not have the courage to try to take a stand for themselves.
Do you feel, Rosa, that this movement has been a success?
It has we have made many improvements from way back there when we had legally enforced racial segregation, but we still have many challenges to face, and we have many problems to solve.
Do you have faith?
Yes, I still have faith that it is possible.
Another man is not the man's color, but the man's deeds, the man's conscious behavior, the man's intention. And when you use that as a standard of measurement or judgment, you never go wrong. But when you just judge a man because of the color of his skin, then you're committing a crime, because that's the worst kind of judgment. If you judged him just because he was a Jew, that's not as bad as judging him because he's black. Because the Jew can hide his religion. He can say he's something else, in which a lot of them do that. They say they're something else. But the black man can't hide. When they start indicting us because of our color, that means we're indicted before we're born, which is the worst kind of crime.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer and the champion of liberty, of human equality. Let's salute him, fellow Ghanaians, the nation's founder, Sergeant Kwame Nkrumah. May God bless him, Ghana showboy, Africa's great song, Sergeant Dr. Nkrumah.
At long last, the battle has ended. And thus, Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. And my last warning to you is that you all should stand firm behind us so that we can prove to the world that when the African is given a chance, he can show to the world that he's somebody. We are awakening. We shall no more go back to sleep anymore. Today, from now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that, after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. But today, may I call upon you all that at this great day, let us all remember that nothing in the world can be done unless it has the purported support of God. We have done the battle, and we again rededicate ourselves not only in the struggle to emancipate other territories in Africa. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent.
Brooklyn, New York, spent some early years in the Barbados, returned to Brooklyn, graduated from Brooklyn College, my alma mater, cum laude, and began a career in early childhood education. She completed her master's degree at Columbia University while working full-time. Active in the political club of her district, she became very aware of the many changes that needed to be made to assure fairer representation of the Blacks, Hispanics, women, and other minorities. In 1964, she was elected to the New York State Assembly, the second woman and one of only 8 Black members. During her 4 years at Albany, she did a lot of stirring up, and in her own words, quote, had a liberal education in how politics is run in our country, unquote, and again in her words added, I did not like a great deal of what I learned, unquote. In 1968, she was elected to Congress, the first Black woman to attain that distinction. As a member of the House Veterans Affairs, Education, and Labor Committees, she achieved major breakthroughs for the poor, women, minorities, and aliens. In 1971, she announced her candidacy as a nominee for the presidency. And though she was not successful, her name, her ideals, and her commitment became part of America's consciousness. In 1982, she ended her stint in Congress and is now a Purrington professor at Mount Holyoke College, devoting herself, as she had always planned, to teaching, lecturing, and traveling in order to create a new national state of mind. I refer you to her 2 books, Unbought and Unbossed, an autobiography, and The Good Fight, the story of her candidacy for the presidency. If you read those, you will feel, as many of us do, that this little Black woman, as she often calls herself, has by conviction and perseverance, and in the face of prejudice, bigotry, and political roadblocks, continued to speak out for many voices and causes that had for too long been silenced. It was interesting to me, and I want to share this with you, and I have his permission, that a young Greenfield boy named Steve Capshaw wrote in an essay on Shirley Chisholm in his 5th grade class last year, a 6th, sorry, Stephen. He said, I think that Shirley Chisholm is one of the few who have strongly helped build our wonderful country. She is someone whom her race, sex, and the whole country can look up to. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I present Mrs. Shirley Chisholm.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. I am very glad to be here this evening. I think it is important that as we look around ourselves in the world today, there's so many complex, complicated problems. And the time has come that somehow we must be able to utilize our creative energies in a positive manner and work together for the amelioration of the human condition. It matters not whether you are white or black, whether you are male or female, but that if you have special talents and aptitudes and abilities, that these collective talents and abilities should be utilized by all of us in order to try and help make this world a better place in which to live.
Nelson Mandela inspired people from all walks of life from all over the world. Here are some of his words of wisdom.
I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people. Your tireless and heroic sacrifices have made it possible for me to be here today. We are going forward. The march towards freedom and justice is irreversible. I have fought very firmly against white domination. I have fought very firmly against black domination. I cherish the ideal of a new South Africa where all South Africans are equal. Ordinary South Africans are determined that the past be known, the better to ensure that it is not repeated. They seek this not out of vengeance, but so that we can move into the future together. After nearly 90 years of life, it is time for new heads to lift the burdens. It is in your hands now.
So life is real short. So you add up all your traveling, add up all your sleeping, add up all your school, add up all your entertainment, you've probably been half your life doing nothing. So what am I'm 35 years old. 30 more years, I'll be 65. We don't have no more influence. We can't do nothing much at 65. Your wife will tell you that. So what I'm saying, when you're 65, ain't too much more to do. So did you know I'll be 65 in 30 more years? In those 30 years, I have to sleep 9 years. I don't have 30 years of daylight. I have to travel back to America, take 6-7 miles. All my traveling, probably 4 years of traveling in the next 30 years, about 9 years of sleeping, television, movies, entertainment, about 3 years of entertainment. Out of 30 years, I might have about 16 years to be productive. So it's how we can all break individual lives down. What am I going to do in the next 16 years? What's the best thing I can do? Get ready to meet God. Owning real estate, going in business, teaching boxers, that won't get me to heaven. How many here believe there's a supreme being, believe there's a God? How many believe there's some power that made the sun, the moon, the stars? How many believe that this stuff didn't just come out here? Somebody wiser than us made it. How many believe there's a God? How many believe there's not a God? All right. Believe there's not a God. All right. If I told you who don't believe in God, if I told you that this glass sprang into existence, this glass made itself, no man made this glass, would you believe it? Would you believe I just told you this thing made itself? No. When I tell you, you wouldn't believe it, right?
No, somebody's doubting it, yeah, so I'm giving you the answer. That's
she wouldn't believe it. If I told her this television station popped into existence, it just, no man made it, you said Muhammad Ali's crazy. All right. Well, if this glass can't make itself, if I told you those clothes you have on wove themselves, nobody created them, those clothes made themselves, you wouldn't believe it. But if your clothes didn't make itself, if that glass couldn't make itself, if this building didn't make itself, then how did the moon get out there? How did the stars and Jupiter, Neptune and Mars and the sun, how did nature, how did all this come here if it didn't know why is something planning to make it? So what I'm saying is, I believe we're going to be judged. Should a man like Hitler kill all the Jews and get away with it? Somebody should punish him. Maybe he get it, don't get it now, he get it when he died, in hell for eternity. So what I'm going to do when I get out of boxing is to get myself ready to meet God, because my plane might blow up. Don't planes blow up in this country sometime and crash? Don't people die every day?
Not every day.
It's a scary thing to think that I'm going to hell to burn eternally forever. So what am I going to do? I'm taking I'm explaining what you asked me a question. You ask me questions I can't just answer like that. When I get out of boxing or when I'm through, I'm going to do all I can to help people. That's why I'm here with Johnny Walker. Here's a poor man, came all the way to America. There's a bunch of boys need some money, and somebody is calling me to help them. God is watching me. God don't praise me because I beat Joe Frazier. God don't give nothing about Joe Frazier. God don't care nothing about England or America as far as your wealth is all his. He wants to know, how do we treat each other? How do we help each other? So I'm going to dedicate my life to using my name and popularity, helping charities, helping people, uniting people, bring people bumming each other because of religious beliefs. We need somebody in the world to help us make peace. So when I die, if there's a heaven, I want to see it. Because we live how long? 80 years? The odds are everybody in this room, some of you are going to be dead 20 years from now, some of you are going to be dead 50 years from now, some are going to be dead 30, some are going to be dead 60, 70 years from now. We all going to die soon. And if you live to be, say, 125 years old, which we don't do, right? Let's say we live to be 250, and you can have sex for 145 of those years. You're going to come to the end after that. So we don't have but about 80 years on earth. This is a test to see where will we spend our life in heaven and hell. This is not the life now. Your real self is inside you. Your body gets old. Some of you go to look at the fridge, you don't have no teeth, your hair is leaving you, your bodies get tired, but your soul and your spirit never die. That's going to live forever. So your body is just housing your soul and spirit. So God is testing us on how we treat each other, how we live, to see where our real home be in heaven. So this physical stuff don't last for so long. So my car, this building is going to be here when the man who built it dead. There have been many kings and queens of England. They're all dead. After this one is gone, another one will come. So we don't stay here. We're just trustees. We don't own nothing. Even your children are not yours. If you think I'm lying, your wife is not yours. You die and come back a year later and go slip in your bedroom and see if your wife is by herself. See, you don't own your wife. You don't own. I divorced my wife. You may have read about it. And my 4 children, they call another man daddy now. They don't see me no more. You don't own your children. You don't own your family. So what am I saying? The most important thing about life is what's going to happen when you die. Are you going to go to heaven or hell? And that's eternity.
Our house was the center of activity in the beginning because we had to create an organization from just it was a spontaneous movement, and so the organization was created, and a lot of the activities, meetings and so forth, were held at our house. A lot of his conferences certainly were at the house because people started coming from all over the media to cover the story. So he had a lot of interviews scheduled there, and sometimes an interview would be scheduled, and I was waiting lunch for him, and he would walk in late, and of course he would say to them, well, he had to have lunch. Would you like to have lunch with me? Well, I hadn't prepared lunch for anybody extra, so I had to say, oh, just a minute. I'll call you in a few minutes, and then try to find some more food from somewhere. So I learned pretty quickly to have a lot of food on hand. I always have more than what Martin and I could eat. But anyway, after the movement started, it was like, you don't plan any day. It's planned for you almost. And I learned to live with that. But Antioch had prepared me for a change, constant change in my life there. So I continued to adjust to it. It wasn't easy, but it was exciting. It was exciting when the people stood up at 50,000 strong to boycott the buses. I mean, that was so exciting because this had never happened before.
And Rosa Parks was also an extraordinary woman. You got to know her during this period.
Oh yes, Mrs. Parks was a very quiet and dignified person, and was the appropriate person to be the pioneer, because she was such a lady. She was a Southern lady, and I think one of the reasons why the bus driver didn't rough her up she was so dignified in her carriage, and she was such a lady. You know, how can you hit on Rosa Parks? You know, and so she was a nonviolent in her spirit even then, because she had been to the Highland Folk School, where they, you know, did talk about nonviolence, teach her some violence, and so everybody. When they found out it was Mrs. Rosa Parks, you know, everyone was righteously indignant, let's say, because how can you, a very respectable lady like Rosa Parks, you put her in jail like this and treat her this way? So I think she was, again, it was the right person for the moment. And of course, Martin was asked to be the spokesperson. When he came home that evening from the first meeting that was called, and told me that he had been selected to be the spokesperson, and he said, I have 20 minutes to prepare for the most important speech in my whole.
This is the most important and crucial period of your lives, for what you do now and what you decide now at this age may well determine which way your life shall go. And the question is whether you have a proper, a solid, and a sound blueprint. And I want to suggest some of the things that should be in your life's blueprint. Number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. And always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Secondly, in your life's blueprint, you must have, as a basic principle, the determination to achieve excellence in your various fields of endeavor. You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. Once you discover what it will be, set out to do it, and to do it well. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. Finally, in your life's blueprint must be a commitment to the eternal principles of beauty, love, and justice. Well, life for none of us has been a crystal staff, but we must keep moving. We must keep going. If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl, but by all means, keep moving.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. But I want you to be first in love. I want you to be first in moral excellence. I want you to be first in generosity. That is what I want you to do. He transformed the situation by giving a new definition of greatness. And you know how he said it? He said, now, brethren, I can't give you greatness. And really, I can't make you first. This is what Jesus said to James and John. You must earn it. True greatness comes not by favoritism, but by fitness. And the right hand and the left are not mine to give. They belong to those who are prepared. And so Jesus gave us a new norm of greatness. If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. And this morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great. Because everybody can serve. Every now and then, I guess we all think realistically about that day when we will be victimized with what is life's final common denominator. And that's something that we call death. We all think about it, and every now and then I think about my own death, and I think about my own funeral, and I don't think of it in a morbid sense. Every now and then I ask myself, what is it that I would want said? And I leave the word to you this morning. If any of you are around when I have to meet my day, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. Every now and then I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right
on the wall question. I want you to be able to say, that day that I did try to feed the hungry. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness. And all of the other shallow things will not matter. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind. But I just want to leave a committed life behind.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Just because I walk as if I have oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my sassiness upset you? Don't take it so hard just because I laugh, as if I have gold mines digging in my own backyard. You can shoot me with your words, you can cut me with your lies, you can kill me with your hatefulness, but just like life, I rise. Does my sexiness offend you? Oh. Does it come as a surprise that I dance as if I have diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain I rise. A black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling and bearing in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise. Into a daybreak miraculously clear I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave. And so, wow, there I go.